As laptops gained popularity through the late 90s, an increasing number of models became available at a variety of price points. In 1997, a new contender entered the scene and kicked off a whole series of portable computers that stood out for better and for worse. Sony was no stranger to making computers, having built MSX machines in the 1980s and even designing and building Apple's first proper notebook, the PowerBook 100. But it wasn't until 1996 when the company started building Windows PCs in the form of the VAIO series, the first model being the PCV90 desktop. Sony's first VAIO laptop came a year later, and its introduction made quite a splash. This is the PCG 505, which Sony marketed under the Super Slim moniker. And compared to mainstream machines at the time, they weren't exaggerating, as it came in at under 1.5 kilograms and only 24 millimeters thick. This one came with a 233 MHz mobile Pentium MMX processor, 32 megabytes of RAM, and a 2 GB hard drive. Because of its 10.4-inch LCD, the keyboard is slightly smaller than standard, but not enough to be problematic, and the machine shipped with Windows 98. Despite its compact size, it offered a decent selection of ports. The right side holds the single PC card slot, power switch, and infrared transceiver, while the left has connectors for the port replicator, floppy drive, power, 4-pin FireWire, USB, and audio. That port replicator offers all the typical PC connectors like parallel, video out, PS2, and serial, though interestingly, not networking. You'd need a PC card if you wanted Ethernet. The display itself even manages to pack a couple interesting features. First are these contacts on both sides, which allowed for attaching the optional stereo speakers without having to worry about wires. On the left side of the screen is a curious panel. Pressing where indicated swivels it out to reveal a passive stylus, which you could use on the VAIO's otherwise normal touchpad. This machine didn't come to me without some problems. First was that despite plugging in the AC adapter, it simply wouldn't power on at all. I've seen laptops with dead batteries do this, and sure enough, after removing it, the machine came to life. But that revealed two more issues. First, there were a couple large spots of dead pixels on the LCD, big enough that they couldn't be ignored. Second, the hard drive had failed. It wasn't being recognized or even spinning up. And as we'll see, this would prove to be quite an annoying problem to solve. A trick that the 505 can pull is that its display folds completely flat. This allowed me to more easily pry up the screw covers holding on the front bezel, then take out the screws underneath. I popped off the inside hinge covers, but realized I needed to remove the outer ones as well. But doing so meant the whole display had to come off, which I had wanted to avoid. In for a penny, in for a pound, as they say, so I flipped the laptop over and took out the screws from the bottom. The outer casing of the 505 is made up of only 4 magnesium alloy panels, which are strong but lightweight. I disconnected the trackpad ribbon cable at the front and pair of keyboard ribbons at the back, then the whole top case could be set aside. This got me access to the display cable, which needed 2 screws taken out before I could unplug it from the motherboard. Then I just had to remove 2 more screws on the left hinge, and the display assembly came free. The remaining hinge covers came off, then I could pry this brass bushing loose and lift away the display bezel. The LCD was held in with screws at its corners, then after unplugging the backlight cable from the inverter, I could hinge it up to disconnect the display cable. Here's what I was after. The panel was made by Toshiba, and searching by its model number can yield better chances of finding a replacement than if I went off the model of the computer itself. Sure enough, I was fortunate and came across a used one on eBay for only $17 US with free shipping. The last time I had to buy a laptop LCD, I got screwed over by a seller who sent me the wrong parts, so I held my breath while unpacking this one. But there was nothing to worry about. It was exactly the model I needed, and aside from a slightly broken display connector, should work just fine. Working on this VAIO had so far been easier than I was expecting. Compact laptops are usually pretty tricky, but between some smart engineering and Sony's typically excellent service manuals, the 505 is quite straightforward. Since I had disassembled the whole thing already, I could then address the dead hard drive. It's also from Toshiba, a fairly typical 2GB IDE model, and I had 2 screws to take out so I could lift it up and unplug its ribbon cable. A pair of brackets needed to come off the old drive so I could transfer them to the replacement, a 30GB Hitachi model. Getting the brackets on was a little tricky as the new drive was slightly thicker. You can tell that Sony's engineers were chasing every millimeter to get the VAIO as thin as possible. But I was able to get the new drive installed, then finish reassembling the machine. Something in the back of my mind was how to get the OS reinstalled on this. VAIOs are infamous for needing special drivers or application software to get all their features working, and whenever possible, the best option is to use the original Restore CD. These can be hard to come by nowadays, and is probably the biggest challenge with fixing up these computers. Fortunately, someone had uploaded a copy of the disk I needed to the Internet Archive, so that was one less thing to worry about. But I had a couple final hardware tasks to finish up. First was sticking the screw covers back on the screen. I've found double-sided tape to work decently well for this. The other was addressing that battery. It kept the machine from booting, but I couldn't just leave it off because it's a part of the computer's cosmetics. I don't really have any experience rebuilding batteries, but even if I did, the casing is ultrasonically welded together, so it's likely I'd cause damage if I tried to open it. So I decided to cheat a little by simply insulating the contacts on the laptop with pieces of Kapton tape. The machine would think the battery was removed, but otherwise look complete. And since it's reversible, I can always address rebuilding the battery at a later time. Let's see if all that work was worth it. The 505 powered on and detected the new hard drive. I hit F2 to get into the BIOS and didn't see anything wrong with the replacement LCD. But there was something a bit strange in how the drive was reported. The system says it has a capacity of only about 8.5 GB. Since the original drive was only 2 GB, this appears to be the maximum size the system can support. With no built-in optical drive, I'd need an external one to use the Restore CD. Conveniently, one came with this machine, modeled PCGA CD5, which was an optional accessory when the computer was sold. But I realized it wouldn't work. Its plug was too big for the floppy drive connector and too small for the I/O interface used by the port replicator. Turns out it needs a PC card to connect to the laptop, and I didn't have it. What I did have was another VAIO laptop drive, a slightly newer model, and while it needs a PC card as well, this time it's permanently attached so it can't get lost. I plugged it in and dropped in the Restore CD I burned, but the machine wouldn't boot from it. It just kept trying to start up the Windows 7 installation that was left on the hard drive, which, of course, wouldn't work. It turns out the laptop simply doesn't see this drive as a bootable device, which is especially frustrating since the sticker on it specifically says it can be used for recovery purposes. I had one final drive to try, which connects through FireWire, but as I suspected, it wasn't bootable either. So I had 3 optical drives that wouldn't work, and without the floppy drive, and those are very hard to find these days, I didn't have a way to use the Restore disk. That meant I'd need to get another computer involved. This ThinkPad is from 1998 and has an easily accessible hard drive bay on the back. I managed to find another drive, this one 6 GB in size, and transferred over the edge connector. I also made a pull tab out of Kapton tape, then dropped it in. These Sony Restore disks were notorious for only working on the model of hardware they were designed for, so while the ThinkPad could boot from it, I wasn't able to actually restore the data to the drive. But I got really lucky. Someone had uploaded a modified version of the disk that had the hardware check removed. I burned a copy of it and the Restore software was none the wiser, letting me proceed as if it was on original hardware. It saw that the hard drive was blank and offered to format it, but when it went to actually write the files, It threw an error about an unsupported partition. I don't think technical support's gonna be able to help me here. I decided to partition the drive myself, so I booted from a Windows 98 floppy and ran fdisk. There was something weird with the partitions on this disk. It showed an NTFS volume as big as the drive, and a DOS one that was somehow even bigger. Maybe this drive wasn't as blank as I thought, so I deleted all of them and created a new FAT32 partition, this time hedging my bets and making it 2 GB, the same as the original failed drive. That seemed to make the restore disk happy. It let me proceed with writing the files. Since the VAIO has a USB port, it would be nice to be able to transfer data using a flash drive, but Windows 98 can't use those out of the box. So after the restore process finished, I dropped in a floppy with the necessary USB mass storage drivers and copied over the installer so I could run it later. With the drive seemingly ready to go and pulled out of the ThinkPad, I had to disassemble the VAIO again to swap it in. I was able to get away with just removing the screws from the bottom, then disconnecting the touchpad cable and flipping the top case against the screen. I managed to get the brackets to work with this new drive and reassembled the machine, confident it would work. That confidence was misplaced. The 505 detected the drive but wouldn't boot from it. I had made a stupid mistake. When I got the drive back in the ThinkPad and ran fdisk, it reminded me that I had forgotten to make the partition active. Oops, apparently the restore disk won't do that for you. Yet with the drive in the VAIO again, it still wouldn't boot, this time with a different error. Had something gone wrong in the restore process? I tried booting the ThinkPad from the drive and it worked fine, so no. The VAIO likewise booted from the CF card I normally use in the ThinkPad, so it didn't seem like there was any kind of allowed hardware list at play here. I went for broke and repartitioned the drive to its full size, then ran the restore again. If this didn't work, my only other plan was to try a generic Windows install, though surprisingly the restore disk included the drivers and applications separately. But the third time's a charm and the restore worked. The VAIO booted to Windows 98 and walked me through the setup wizard. What a ridiculous process this was, though it's far from the first time I've had to battle with getting an operating system on a Sony PC. And the final middle finger from this thing? Turns out it runs the original version of Windows 98, whereas those USB mass storage drivers require the second edition. I'll deal with that another day. Or maybe never. Sony, of course, sprinkled its own applications into the Windows experience, from this sidebar that shows battery status to various programs in the Start menu. One of them, ScribblePad, let me check out using that stylus. Interesting, but not exactly remarkable. And that sums up the underlying hardware in this model too. The graphics are powered by a basic Neo Magic chip with 1 MB of video memory, and sound uses the ESS audio drive, which was serviceable but not exactly the best. The 32 MB of included RAM was soldered to the motherboard to save space, and while Sony offered the ability to expand it, the machine's thin design necessitated a proprietary memory module. Despite its limitations, it earned overall positive reviews, primarily for one simple reason. While other manufacturers were also making ultra-slim laptops, the 505 by far offered the best value, selling for about $2,000 US. For that same price, you could buy the mainstream ThinkPad 390E, the same machine I used to get this VAIO going again, but it's over twice as thick and heavy and didn't have much better specifications. It's nice that the ThinkPad has built-in floppy and CD-ROM drives, but if you traveled a lot, you probably wished it didn't. And that's what made the VAIO pretty appealing. Over time, Sony would produce a wide variety of laptops, some mainstream and some very much not. They had their friends and foes, but it's hard to argue that they didn't at least try to do something different. The company wasn't always successful, but overall, this VAIO makes for a solid first try. If you liked the video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. Here's another video you might want to check out, and as always, thanks for watching.